from Washington, former White House press secretary for President Obama, Robert Gibbs, and from Capitol Hill, former White House press secretary for President George W. Bush, Ari Fleischer. Here we go.
They're here for a face-off. Unfortunately, there's going to be a tough debate. We had them in the same room, and the punches were thrown. Gibbs has bandages already on his face. We had to separate them. They're at different locations now, undisclosed locations. Let's start with the first question, and Gibby, we hope you feel better soon. Let's start with the first question. It has to do with the president's foreign policy. The numbers have come out. Only Ari, the president's approval rating in foreign policy 32%, disapproval rating 62%. Why are those numbers so low?
Because I think the American people are used to strength and leadership from their president, and the president hurt his own cause when he had to take back his words when he said that his goal was to destroy ISIS and make it a manageable problem. The president has squandered much of the strength of foreign policy. He has a chance, frankly, to get it back tonight, and his speech tonight is a rare moment where presidents have the attention of the country, particularly on the eve of 9/11, in a way that the president has tremendous opportunity tonight to reset the foreign policy table.
Robert already says that the president has squandered his opportunity. Do you agree?
No, absolutely not. And I think that I do agree with Ari in that the president has a moment tonight that only presidents are afforded to reassert himself, to get rid of some of the bad optics of August. But I think what the American people want to see is steady leadership and a plan for dealing with ISIS. That's what they'll expect tonight, and I think that's what you'll likely hear the president deliver.
Robert,
again, in a very unique
do you think the president's
moment.
taken too long? Do you think he's been a bit too deliberate? He's always called cold, aloof, a professor. Is this one of those times where really the public really rose up against him because of those personal attributes that they knew they were getting when they elected him?
Well, I do think, look, I do think in many ways the deliberateness is obviously a reaction to a decade of having gotten into things in a manner of sort of ready, fire, aim, and that's not the way this president is going to get into it. Look, we'll only have history to look back and see whether if going in a month earlier would have made a big difference or not.
All right, guys, here's the Wall Street Journal editorial. Dick Cheney is still right.
That's hard for you to say, isn't it?
It doesn't roll off the tongue.
I like it. I like how that sounds.
President Obama will lay out his plan to counter the Islamic State on Wednesday night, and will judge the strategy on its merits. But the mere fact that Mr. Obama feels obliged to send Americans to fight again in Iraq acknowledges the failure of his foreign policy. He is tacitly admitting that the liberal critique of the Bush administration's approach to Islamic terrorism was wrong. Robert Gibbs.
I
agree.
It's hard to hear, isn't it?
I feel like I'm in the Wayback Machine, Dick Cheney in Iraq. Look, maybe the best thing I can say is that if all this keeps up, we might finally be greeted as liberators in Iraq, and Dick Cheney will in some way finally be right for a prediction he made there. I will say this, I don't think the American people are still fighting the Bush-Cheney versus Barack Obama on Iraq. I think what they want to see is something moving forward to deal with what they believe is a serious threat.
Ari Fleischer?
Not just in Iraq, but throughout the Middle East.
Is Cheney still right?
Well, I think what the issue really is, would we all have been better off if the president had reached an agreement with Iraq to leave a substantial amount of American forces there? Would that have prevented ISIS from coming in the first place? And the answer is probably yes. I was ambiguous about that myself. I was happy in many ways that we were done, but it was a mistake. We should have kept the troops there. And I think that part is right. But Robert nailed it as far as what the American people want. They're not interested in this retroactive debate. They want solutions to what's going on there now to protect our country.
I think most Americans agree with both of you guys. I'm really disappointed you're not fighting each other as much as you should be. But I think this is very hopeful because you guys are both talking about looking forward. So, Ari, let me ask you, you take care of organizations that are in trouble, that need some help with their PR. What is the one thing that you would have the President of the United States say tonight to convince the American people that he gets it?
He needs to ring clear that this is a threat to the United States, that ISIS represents a threat to our interests in the Middle East, to our country, and that nobody can behead Americans without paying a heavy price.
That's right.
And that he is resolute that we will destroy ISIS. The rest is the details about how, and that's important for him to execute it well.
Robert,
that's the moment tonight.
You've done this before, Robert. What would you be telling the president tonight?
Very similar things. I think in many ways the people of the United States, you see from the polling, are very much in tune with the fact that ISIS is a big threat. Unlike a year ago when the president was trying to to convince the American people about airstrikes in Syria because of the use of chemical weapons,
Right.
and 60% of the people said no. They're on the side of understanding there's a big threat. I think the most important thing from the president is to reassert his leadership in laying out a succinct and clear plan that won't be easy and will take quite some time, and what that will entail for the American people.
That's what I was trying to say
Yep,
before.
exactly.
All right, Fleischer,
Thank
Robert
you, Ari.
Gibbs, thank you so much.
Robert,
Thank you,
stay
guys.
with us. We're going to talk to you at the top of the hour also. I will tell you the fact that those two agreed so much, and I saw that as a very encouraging sign. America is really in the
Thanks.
same place right now with this threat, and that's really great news for the country, and it's great news for the president.
Much more ahead.